So a question that we get relatively often is, should I prioritize trading for young players with high potential or established veterans with a proven track record? Do I want to go after the young guys or do I want to go after the veterans who, I feel more confident about, getting that production? Well, I'm here to tell you the answer is yes.
Yes.
And I'm going to tell you why, because you're like, well, I can't do that. I can't just go out and get all the good young players and get all the high producing veterans. Well, of course not. It's all about a balance. And, one of the best ways to do this, you got to find that balance where you have the young players with high potential that are going to be that next wave after your current veterans and, your current high producers. So you have your wide receivers, who are 27, 28, 29 years old. They're putting up the big weeks, week in and week out. Those are the guys you're putting in a starting lineup. Guys like Jaden Reed, Marvin Mims, hopefully if you're a contending team, you're not starting those players in your lineup, but those are the players you're counting on maybe to be the wide receivers in your lineup, next year or, 2 years from now. And that works for you. That gives you depth. That gives you a contending team depth. And that's what you really need to get through the entire fantasy season and getting through the playoffs and still be able to contend. And also you need to do this between all of your different position groups. You need to do it with quarterback. You need to do it with running back. Wide receiver is kind of the easiest because it's a little bit easier to project those guys out. The running back situation, we talked about it all the time. It's so fluid. Things change so quickly week in and week out once the season starts, even without the season, between free agency and the draft now. We don't know what to make of the running back situation, just about every single team. Quarterback's a little bit easier, but and tight end, we love tight ends here. So all of us have like 8 tight ends on our teams. So we're never worried about tight ends and if we have enough depth there. Taking a look at each position group on your team, making sure that they fit your timeline for your overall team, but making sure that each position group itself also has that young player, productive player, and that balance between the two. If you're a rebuilding team, then obviously your balance should be much higher with the young, high potential players. If you're a contending team, you might have a bit more balance to the veteran producers because that's what your overall team timeline is looking at. But also break that down into each position group. And then once you have those needs where, hey, I need to build up the depth of my wide receivers, or hey, I have 2 good tight ends, but I got nothing after that. Let me go see if I can grab maybe Trey McBride. That's going to come back, and someone's going to be happy to have picked up Trey McBride in their league. That's how I want to look at my position groups. That's how I determine if I'm going after young potential players, high veteran players. Break it down in a position group. Look at your overall timeline.
Yeah, one question I get is, should I prioritize depth in a balanced roster or focus on acquiring star players? As good as it is to have all of these stud players on your team, I like in Dynasty to have a good amount of depth. We're seeing it right now where we just lost Nick Chubb, Austin Eckler. Who's else not playing? Miles Sanders isn't playing great. Jonathan Taylor's out. Like, there's so many good running backs that are out. So, it doesn't really matter if you have the stars at that position. I think at wide receiver, having the stars means a good amount. But I'd much rather have depth pieces all around just in case these injuries come up or suspension and whatnot with Alvin Kamara comes up. You still have somebody that can fit in and just handle the weeks until you get those guys back. Because it can go really south 4 weeks down the line if you didn't have a replacement for Jonathan Taylor. Maybe you picked up Zach Moss. Maybe you didn't. Maybe you picked up Joshua Kelly. But sometimes those players don't work out as well. So it's always nice to have a lot more depth, guys that you can count on that have decent roles already in the offense. And, just having players that you can fit into your lineup and continue to just churn points. So, just finding players that have consistent roles in an offense. Like Jaylen Warren's a guy right now who I think has a consistent role in the passing game for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Mm-hmm. I love what he's been able to do so far. Is it going to be 30 points a game? No. But, he's looking at possibly 10 points a game just in receiving alone, and he's had good rushing attempts as well. So Jaylen Warren's a guy that I would like to have on my depth. We talked about him a lot this offseason. I just want to find players that are versatile as well, not limited to one skill set. Yeah, it's great if they can run the football, but if they can't block in passing downs or catch the football, there's really no point to them. They're only going to get 1 or 2 touches in that drive. And then when it comes down to it, when we have a Jaylen Warren or a Chuba Hubbard, where 2-minute drill comes up, they're out on the field catching passes. Last night we saw Chuba Hubbard get like 4 or 5 catches in the last 2 minutes of the game there. So, that's a lot of points being had for a player that, he is a good rusher and he is a good pass catcher, and that benefited him this last week. So I really think having depth is the way to go, In redraft, yes, having those star players probably matters a little bit more, but I like to have that depth in Dynasty to get me through the injuries and get me moving forward.
So another question that we get approached with a significant amount of time. What are some mistakes to avoid when trading in dynasty leagues? Now, this is kind of a very, very open-ended question, but I'll just tell you what I tell a lot of people. It's always been said, draft best available and trade for need. It's a good strategy, but it's also important how you implement it, okay? You have to make sure that you properly align your values. Never send your best offer first. Got to be able to negotiate and be prepared to counter, be prepared to engage with your trade partner. The biggest mistake I see and discuss with people is to make sure that the player you want to acquire makes sense for your team. If you're not competing, please don't trade for Josh Allen or Justin Jefferson. Why would you do that? People are like, I really want Josh Allen on my team. He's a guy that for whatever reason, like last year, I got a lot. I really want Josh Allen. I get it. Josh Allen is a fantastic player, but he might not make sense for you. Right now, it might be better to buy a more depressed value quarterback like a Jared Goff or a Jordan Love, although Jordan Love's been playing extremely well, so his value is definitely going up. So don't just reach for the stars right away. Look for good value and upside if you're rebuilding. But look, if this player is the missing piece, guess what? You don't have to dumpster dive anymore. You can go for it. Go for the championship run. Don't mortgage your future until it's time to do so. There's a time and a place, and I hate to say you'll know, but you'll start to see the trends. You'll start to be winning games. You're blowing people out week in and week out, and you just need that one piece to secure it.
A lot of people ask, how do I approach trading with a team that's in a different timeline? They have different urgency to win. Whether you're a contending team trading with a rebuilding team, whether you're a rebuilding team trading with a contending team. Once you get to week 4, 5, 6, when people start to make that active decision of, all right, I need to start looking towards next year. Other guys are like, hey, this is the year. I'm going to be a contender. I'm going to be in the championship game. Let's make it happen. This is when trading really opens up. And this is when you can make a lot of deals, because I think we've all realized at this point that to trade, you need both parties to agree to it. And, I'll be honest, I play in some leagues where there's some people I know I can trade with. I usually get a deal. There's a couple people out there. But most of the time, I got to make you a deal that makes your team better, just like I'm making a deal that makes my team better. When you find someone that's on a different trajectory than you, it makes it that much easier to come to terms for a deal, because you guys are valuing things differently. And because of that, you're able to find more middle ground. It sounds backwards because you think that people valuing things differently would, be more apart. But, if I'm a contending team, you're a contending team, hey, I got Keenan Allen on my team. I don't really want to trade him to your team for, a second round pick, because I need him in my lineup. And also, if I trade him to you, I'm helping you. I don't want to make that trade. But if I'm a rebuilding team, I got Keenan Allen on my lineup, and a contending team offers me a second and, I don't know, Josh Downs maybe. Second and Josh Downs. I think you might be able to get more. I don't know. That seems about reasonable, right, guys? Josh Downs in the second for Keenan Allen-ish. You should be able to get more for that production. But let's just say that's what you're going with. It makes a lot of sense for both teams to make that move. And that's what you want to find. So once you find teams are actively making that decision of, hey, I'm going all in this year, or hey, I'm looking towards next year, that's when you got to jump, and you got to do it right away, because you want to get in there before other people get in there. Before they, if you're a rebuilding team, you want to go get draft picks before they start trading to other people. If you're a contending team, you want to go get you want to set the market price for those veterans that are going to be productive, because as soon as you go out and you get Keenan Allen for Josh Downs in the second, somebody else who has Mike Williams, they want a first round pick now, because they saw Keenan Allen go for Josh Downs in the second. So it just kind of helps you out and make sure that, you can take advantage of the situation, because this is really a great opportunity to create trades when you find someone in a different trajectory than you. It's really easy to find someone that works for both of you.
Chev, what is another FAQ, frequently asked question, that we get over here at the Dynasty Rewind that you want to tackle for us?
Yeah, one I have is, what are some effective strategies for identifying buy low and sell high opportunities in trade discussions? This is awesome because you get to kind of decide, when you want to buy the dip and sell at the peak. That's what we really want to do. We want to find how to create value. I think a lot of it has to do with looking at matchups against future teams. Some players may have played the Bears. They may have played the Houston Texans their first few games, and they just crushed it. And then their next few games could be against Baltimore, against the Steelers, against the Bills, teams that just have stouter defenses and are just a more well put together team. So you have to look at that. You have to see, will this player's value dip if I continue to have him on my team? Is this a time that I can sell him and maybe get rid of him? You know, Joshua Kelly maybe have been a good one. Week 1 had a great week 1, and then week 2 wasn't just as good. He had a lot of touches, a lot of chances, but just never got it done. Those could be times where we could maybe sell them, you know, but now we maybe need him because maybe we had Eckler and he was our handcuff to him. Another one is, are they performing well due to players missing in their offense? This is going to go to like Zach Moss. This is going to go to guys that are playing now because their top position player is not in the game anymore. Somebody that, you know, we can maybe find a way to sell if they're playing well at that time. Or maybe it could be buying low. If maybe Jonathan Taylor is not being talked about enough in your league, maybe now you can go buy low on him, and you know you're waiting for 2 more weeks. I imagine he's going to be playing at some point this upcoming year, and should be playing well back to the way that he's played. You know, also I think we need to take a better look at what kind of play style will this team have. Once a team changes coaches and changes QBs, and you know things go a little haywire. Sometimes the offenses change. Sometimes you know the team's defenses change as well. We have to see what those offenses are going to look like the next upcoming year. You know, we knew that the Chargers were going to continue to throw the football. There could continue to be a high-scoring offense. You know, what does that look like for some of these other guys like Quentin Johnston? Like, is he going to be getting passes, or is it going to be the Keenan Allen show? We've seen Keenan Allen be that guy. So, you know, just really looking at what kind of style of play they're going to have. And then another reason to do this is the player going to be a boom or bust player, or are they locked in for consistency? We're looking at George Pickens here. Is he going to be a guy now with Deontay Johnson out? Is he going to be the alpha? Is he going to take over that wide receiver 1 role and take it away from Deontay? Or is he going to continue to just be that guy that maybe has a big game, and then there's other games where he's just completely silenced? So I think that's what we need to really be looking at when we're trying to identify buy low or sell high opportunities. What does their value look like in the next 3 games? Is it going to be going up, or is it going to be going down?
Well said. And let's go to our last FAQ. Should I trade for injured players with the hope of long-term value? My answer to that is yes and no, because it's situational. If it's a short-term injury and you have a panicking manager and you have the room for that player, bench or IR, and you believe that player can make a difference down the stretch, I say go for it. If you're rebuilding and you can get a young player who's going to be available when your team is ready to start picking up team, like a J.K. Dobbins, possibly, then this is a great strategy to implement, especially if they've shown flashes in the past. You know, if you're a contending team, you probably don't want to try to give up any assets, guys that you're playing right now, or future draft capital, be it if you think you're contending and you think it's going to be late still. You know, you don't want to have injured guys clogging up your roster. You know, you don't want somebody else's injured players clogging up your IR. You want to save those for the guys that you believe in, that you believe can help you draft them. You traded for them already. But I do think that when you do want to trade for an injured player, it's really important to not pounce right away. You know, look, Nate has a lot of J.K. Dobbins shares. If J.K. Dobbins got hurt and I was already up in his face, he's a Ravens fan. He's mad about the injury for his team and his fantasy teams. These fantasy teams are not real, but you do have to realize the people managing them are sometimes. And look, we say, hey, it's just a game. People get angry about this stuff. People get defensive about this stuff. These are their guys. Don't get in their face right away. Wait a little bit. Watch their team. See how their team does without that player in the lineup, and see if you could offer something up to help everybody. Because Nate made a really good point before where he said, you know, you have to make each team better during a trade. You know, when you try to acquire this player, try not to move assets that you need during the season, future assets, depth pieces. I'm all about trying to trade for injured players if you got the room, if you're not competing right now. That's it. Now, I will say this, though. Chev did make a good point. If you are competing, I do think Jonathan Taylor would be a good player to try to trade for. You know what I mean? If you think that your team's doing good, because you know what he's going to be when he comes back.
And this goes back to a point I made, I think, last week or 2 weeks ago. With injured players, you want to wait a couple of weeks. Like you say, you say like don't get in their face right away. You know, this is like, you know, you wait 5-6 weeks. They've been sitting on the IR for 5 weeks. No one's thinking about him anymore. That's the time you want to go get those injured players.
Yep.